The warning alarm screamed too late. Katie Morrison barely saw the strange energy beam before it locked onto her fighter jet. She hit the emergency controls hard, but nothing worked. The beam held her ship tight, pulling it toward the massive alien vessel like a fish on a hook. Katie grabbed her radio. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Sierra 79er. Unknown hostiles have captured me. Sending my location now." Only static answered her. Whatever these aliens were using, it blocked all her communications with Earth. She was completely alone. Through her cockpit window, Katie watched the alien ship grow bigger and bigger. It looked nothing like human ships. The surface was covered with strange curves and metal that seemed almost alive. A huge door opened like a mouth, and her fighter was pulled inside. The moment she felt gravity again, Katie started the self-destruct sequence on her fighter. If these aliens wanted her ship, they would get nothing but broken pieces. She had 30 seconds. Katie popped open the cockpit and jumped out, hitting the metal floor hard. The air smelled strange, like metal and electricity, but she could breathe it. She ran toward what looked like a hallway, reaching for her gun. She made it only 15 meters before something invisible hit her. Her body went stiff, and she fell. The last thing Katie saw was a tall, thin creature walking toward her. It had many eyes that seemed to glow with interest. When Katie woke up, she found herself strapped to a table that seemed to change shape to fit her body. The room was white and clean, filled with equipment that glowed with soft lights. Standing over her were several of the alien creatures. "The specimen is awake," one of them said. Katie was shocked that she could understand the words. They must have put some kind of translator in her head. "Good," another one replied. This alien wore what might have been rank badges. "Begin scanning her, Dr. Vexlar. Commander Zephyrim wants a complete study before we start making copies." The scientist named Dr. Vexlar moved closer. Its voice sounded excited. "This specimen is very interesting. The humans come from what we call a Class 12 death world. The evolution alone makes them perfect for the soldier program." Katie tested the straps holding her down. They were incredibly strong. She forced herself to breathe slowly and think clearly. These creatures wanted to clone her. They wanted to make copies of her to use as soldiers. "You are making a big mistake," Katie said, her voice rough. The aliens seemed surprised she could talk. "The specimen already has language ability," Dr. Vexlar noted, making gestures over a floating screen. "The translation device worked faster than we predicted. This proves the brain flexibility we saw in early studies." "Let me be clear," Katie continued, looking straight at what she thought was the scientist's main eye. "Whatever you think you know about humans, you are wrong. We are not your lab animals. We are not your soldiers. And if you do this, it will end very badly for you." Commander Zephyrim moved forward, towering over the table. "Your species barely has faster-than-light travel. You have no real military power, no territory beyond your single star system, and no friends among the galaxy's species. You cannot threaten the Zenthari Empire." Katie smiled. But it was not a friendly smile. "I am not threatening you. I am warning you. There is a difference." "Begin the extraction," Zephyrim ordered, ignoring her words. "I want the first clone ready within 3 cycles." Dr. Vexlar brought out tools that looked like a nightmare mix of surgery equipment and living things. "This will hurt," the alien said, almost apologizing. "We need complete genetic material, brain mapping, and memory patterns. The process takes several of your hours." Katie gritted her teeth as the first probe touched her skin. "You will regret this." "Perhaps," Dr. Vexlar replied. "But the Empire needs expendable shock troops. Your discomfort does not matter. You should feel honored. Your genes will serve the Zenthari for generations." As the machines began their work, Katie forced herself to remember every detail of the lab, every face of her captors, every exit and hallway she could see. If she escaped, she would need every advantage. But a darker thought entered her mind as the brain probes dug deeper. What would a clone of her be like? Would it have her memories, her training, her hatred of being trapped in a cage? The Zenthari were about to find out. Dr. Vexillar worked for hours, extracting samples from Katie's body and creating detailed maps of her brain. The pain was intense, but Katie refused to scream. She would not give them that satisfaction. Remarkable, the scientist kept saying. The human body is incredibly tough. The cellular structure is more complex than we expected. The brain density is exceptional. How long will it take to make the clone? Commander Zephyrim asked, watching the process. With accelerated growth, perhaps one cycle, Dr. Vexlar replied. We can speed up the development much faster than natural birth. The clone will have all the original's physical abilities, combat training, and memories. Will it obey us? Zephyrim asked. We will program it to be loyal, the scientist said confidently. We will suppress any rebellion. It will know only service to the Empire. Katie listened to them talk about her future clone like it was a machine they were building. The anger burned inside her, but she kept it hidden. She needed to stay calm, to think, to plan. Finally, the extraction was complete. Dr. Vexillar stepped back, looking at the data on the floating screens. We have everything we need. The cloning process can begin immediately. Take the original to holding cell 7, Zephyrim ordered. Keep her alive. We may need more samples later. Guards came and released Katie from the table. Her body ached everywhere, but she stood on her own. They put energy cuffs on her wrists and led her through the corridors of the alien station. Katie memorized everything she saw: guard positions, door controls, weak points in the walls. She was a fighter pilot, trained to notice details that could mean the difference between life and death. The holding cell was small, with walls made of some kind of clear, hard material. They pushed her inside, and the door sealed with a hiss. Katie was alone. She sat on the floor and closed her eyes, not to rest, but to think. The Zenthari thought they understood humans. They thought copying her body and memories would give them a perfect soldier. They were wrong. Humans were not just flesh and bone and training. They were survival instinct. They were rage at injustice. They were the refusal to give up no matter the odds. You could not program that. You could not control it. Dr. Vexillar stood in front of the cloning tank with all of its limbs folded behind its back. Inside the tall glass tube, floating in thick, glowing liquid, was a perfect copy of the human female. Cell structure is stable, announced lab technician Korma, watching the flowing data on the screens. Brain pathways are forming according to the template. Memory transfer is 97% complete. Amazing, Vexillar whispered. The human genetic code is surprisingly strong. It accepts changes with very little rejection. The fast growth methods have cut development time from 3 cycles to 1. Commander Zephyrim entered the lab with a group of armed guards. The military officer's presence made the scientists nervous. They moved more stiffly and formally. Give me your report, Zephyrim demanded. The clone will be ready within 6 hours, Vexillar replied. We successfully transferred the original specimen's motor skills, language abilities, and combat training. The memory transfer was more complete than we expected. It seems human brain structure is remarkably dense. Will it obey orders? Zephyrim asked, moving closer to the tank. Inside, the clone's eyes moved under closed eyelids as if dreaming. We have added behavioral changes, Vexillar explained. Loyalty programming, reduced aggression toward Zenthari personnel, increased response to commands, standard methods for soldier-class clones. Are you certain? Zephyrim's tone showed doubt. The original specimen was very defiant. Personality comes from environment, Vexillar said with confidence. We control the environment. Besides, the clone will have no reason for rebellion. It will wake knowing only what we allow it to know. What Vexlar did not mention, because the scientist did not yet understand it, was that human memory was not just stored in brain patterns. It lived in the body itself, in the tension of muscles that had fought, in the chemistry of a brain that had known fear and rage and the fierce will to survive. The Zenthari had copied Katie Morrison's body and mind, but they had also copied something else. Millions of years of human evolution, refined on a world that killed without mercy, that demanded strength and cleverness, and an absolute refusal to give up. They had copied a predator. 6 hours later, the tank began to drain. The clone's eyes opened. For a moment, it floated peacefully in the remaining liquid, blinking slowly as awareness came in. The scientists watched every vital sign, every brain spike, every chemical change in the clone's body. "Consciousness achieved," Korma announced. "Vital signs stable. Brain activity within expected levels." The tank opened with a hiss of air. The clone stepped out onto the lab floor, naked and dripping with birth fluid. It looked exactly like Katie Morrison, down to the small scar on its left shoulder from a training accident. "Subject Alpha," Vexlar spoke to it in human English. "Do you understand me?" The clone's head turned toward the voice. Its eyes, Katie's eyes, were clear and focused. "Yes." "Good. You are a creation of the Zenthari Empire, designed to serve as a soldier. You will obey all commands given by authorized personnel. Do you understand?" "Yes." Zephyrim stepped forward, studying the clone carefully. "Tell me your purpose." "To serve the Zenthari Empire," the clone replied, its voice flat and empty. "Excellent," Vexlar said, making notes. "The behavioral programming appears successful. Commander, with your permission, I would like to begin combat ability testing." "Proceed," Zephyrim said, but kept its weapon hand near its gun. Vexlar gestured to one of the lab workers, who brought forward a simple puzzle box. "Subject Alpha. Solve this problem." The clone took the box and worked it with quick, precise movements. Within seconds, it had opened all the locks. The scientists made pleased gestures to each other. "Problem-solving ability is excellent. Now, Subject Alpha, perform a series of combat positions. Begin with defensive position Gamma." The clone moved instantly, its body flowing into a defensive crouch that was pure military training. It cycled through a dozen positions, each one done with perfect form. "Outstanding," Vexlar said. "The motor memory transfer is even better than predicted. We can begin mass production within—" "I have a question," the clone interrupted. The lab fell silent. According to the behavioral programming, the clone should not have started a conversation on its own. "Speak," Zephyrim commanded, hand now openly on its weapon. The clone tilted its head in a very human way. "Where is the original?" "That is not relevant to your function," Vexlar said, concern entering its voice. "You are not the original. You are a tool created to serve." "I understand," the clone said. Then, with a smile that made every alien in the room step back, it added, "But that is not what I asked. I asked where she is." "Lab 3, Section Gamma," Korma blurted out before Vexlar could stop it. "The original specimen is in holding cell." "Thank you," the clone said. Then it moved. The Zenthari had studied human body structure extensively. They knew humans could run at about 10 meters per second. They knew human reaction time was around 250 milliseconds. They knew the limits of human strength and pain tolerance. What they did not know, what they could not have known from their clean observations, was what happened when you took a trained soldier, gave her all her memories of captivity and violation, and removed the mental barriers that civilization had built around the human capacity for violence. The clone covered the distance to the nearest lab worker in less than a second. Before anyone could react, it had broken the alien's neck and taken its access tablet. Alarms screamed to life. "Stop it!" Zephyrim shouted, pulling out its weapon. The clone was already moving, using the dead worker's body as a shield. Energy bolts burned the air where it had been standing. It threw the corpse at two security guards, knocking them down, and rolled toward a lab station. "Seal the exits!" Vexillar commanded, but the clone had already accessed the lab's environmental controls with the stolen tablet. The lights went out. In the darkness, the Zenthari heard something that froze their hearts. Laughter. Human laughter. Wild and free. "You wanted to copy a human," the clone's voice called out from the darkness. "You wanted our strength, our ability to adapt, our survival instinct. Congratulations. You succeeded." The emergency lighting flickered on, making everything look red like blood. The clone was gone, but 3 more security guards lay dead, their bodies broken in ways that spoke of efficiency and rage. The emergency exit had been torn open from the inside, the metal twisted like paper. On the wall, written in alien blood, was a message in English. "Coming for the original. Then coming for you." Commander Zephyrim stood in the destroyed lab, weapons still out, and felt something it had never experienced in its 30 cycles of service to the Empire. The alarm had been screaming for 20 minutes, and Lab Section Gamma was completely locked down. Red emergency lights painted the hallways in shades of blood as security teams rushed to set up barriers. In the command center, Commander Zephyrim watched many screens showing different parts of the research facility. The clone had disappeared into the maintenance tunnels, a network of small passages the Zenthari had foolishly thought were too tight for the specimen to use. "All teams, the subject is extremely dangerous," Zephyrim broadcast. "You are authorized to use lethal force. Bring me that creature's body." Dr. Vexillar stood nearby, its multiple limbs shaking. "Commander, we must capture it alive. The data we could gather from—" "Your experiment killed 6 of my soldiers," Zephyrim snarled. "It is a mistake that will be corrected. After we kill this one, we will terminate the original and destroy all human genetic samples from the facility." Vexillar wanted to argue, but knew better than to disagree with an angry military commander. In the holding cells of Lab 3, Katie Morrison sat on the floor of her clear cell, listening to the alarms with grim satisfaction. She did not know exactly what had happened, but she could guess. They had created something they could not control. Good. A guard stood outside her cell, weapon raised, all 4 of its eyes scanning the hallway nervously. Katie watched it with the patience of a hunter. Something was coming, and she planned to be ready when it arrived. In the maintenance tunnel marked as Sector 12B, the clone moved without making a sound. It had disabled 3 security cameras and avoided 2 patrol teams. The tunnel was dark, cramped, and smelled of recycled air and machine oil. To the clone, it felt like home. Humans had evolved in caves and forests, learning to move quietly while predators hunted. This was just another type of cave. The clone reached an access panel and pried it open with stolen tools. Inside was a junction box for the facility's secondary power system. It took 30 seconds to change the circuits, creating a power drain that would blow out systems across 3 sections. As sparks flew and lights flickered throughout the facility, the clone smiled. Humans were good at breaking things, especially when motivated. 3 security teams rushed to the maintenance tunnel entrance, but the clone was already gone, moving through an air duct that the Zenthari had thought was too small for a prisoner to access. They had underestimated human flexibility, the ability to bend and squeeze through impossibly tight spaces when survival demanded it. The clone emerged into a storage bay filled with equipment and supplies. It quickly looked at everything available: chemical compounds, medical supplies, engineering tools. Not weapons exactly, but humans had been making weapons from whatever was at hand for 200,000 years. 5 minutes later, the clone had built 3 crude explosive devices from cleaning chemicals and compressed gas containers. They would not win a war, but they would certainly make a statement. "Security Team 7, go to Storage Bay 4, a voice commanded over the facility's speakers. The subject has been detected in that area. The clone set timers on the devices, placed them carefully, and slipped back into the ventilation system. It had already moved 2 sections away when the explosions tore through the storage bay, sending a fireball racing through the hallways. More alarms, more chaos, more opportunities. Commander Zephyrim watched the security feeds with growing fury. The clone was systematically destroying the facility, and its random, unpredictable movements made it impossible to corner. "How is this possible?" Zephyrim demanded. "It is one subject, unarmed, naked, and it is making fools of my entire security force." "Humans evolved as persistence hunters," Vexillar said quietly, studying the tactical displays. "On their world, they would chase prey for days until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. They can sustain high activity for long periods, and they are problem solvers, tool users. Every environment is a resource to them." "Are you saying we cannot stop it?" Zephyrim turned on the scientist. "I am saying we underestimated it," Vexillar replied. "The clone has all of Lieutenant Morrison's training, her intelligence, and none of the mental conditioning that keeps civilized beings from unleashing total violence. We created a soldier without a conscience, a predator without restraint." As if to prove the point, another explosion rocked the facility. This time, it was the main power junction for Section D. Half the research station went dark. In her cell, Katie felt the lights go out. She heard the energy field containing her flicker and die. The door lock released with a soft click. The guard outside spun around, weapon raised, but Katie was already moving. She grabbed the alien's weapon arm and twisted, using its own momentum to slam it face first into the wall. The weapon clattered to the floor. Katie picked it up and checked the charge. Full. "About time," she whispered, and ran toward the exit. The facility was chaos. Scientists and technicians fled through smoke-filled hallways while security teams rushed past, heading toward whatever crisis was currently demanding attention. Katie moved against the flow, her mind racing. She needed to find her gear, locate an escape route, and ideally destroy as much of this facility as possible on her way out. She turned a corner and came face to face with herself. The clone stood in the hallway, covered in soot and alien blood, holding a makeshift weapon that looked like it had been built from lab equipment. For a moment, both women simply stared at each other. "You are the original," the clone said. "Yeah," Katie replied. "You?" "I am. I do not know what I am." The clone's expression was conflicted, lost. "I have your memories, your training, but I am not you." "No," Katie agreed, lowering her weapon slightly. "But you are close enough, and right now, we have the same goal, getting out of here and making these things pay for what they did." The clone considered this, then nodded. "Agreed. But after that?" "After that, we figure out who you are and what comes next," Katie said. "But first, we burn this place to the ground." For the first time since waking up, the clone smiled genuinely. "I like that plan." Together, the two women moved through the facility, a perfectly synchronized pair of predators hunting their captors. Every security team that tried to stop them discovered that one human soldier was dangerous. 2 were unstoppable. They fought with a savage efficiency that terrified the Zenthari. Katie used her military training, taking controlled shots and using cover effectively. The clone fought with raw instinct, moving in ways that were unpredictable and brutal. "We need to hit something that will really hurt them," Katie said as they cleared another corridor. "Not just cause damage, but cripple this whole station." The research facility's main reactor core sat at the heart of the complex, a massive fusion generator that powered the entire station. It was protected by multiple security systems, armed guards, and blast doors thick enough to withstand a direct hit from most ship weapons. None of that mattered to Katie Morrison and her clone. "The control room is through there," Katie said, studying the stolen access tablet they had taken from a dead security officer. 4 guards, maybe more. Heavy weapons. The clone checked its improvised weapon, a salvaged energy rifle combined with parts from a lab's cutting laser. We could go through the environmental systems, bypass the main entrance. Takes too long, Katie said. They will have triggered the emergency shutdown by now. We have maybe 10 minutes before they lock down the reactor completely. So we go loud. The clone's expression was fierce, eager even. Katie studied her duplicate, seeing the barely controlled violence simmering beneath the surface. This was what she might have become without training, without discipline, without the social conditioning that turned soldiers into defenders rather than killers. The clone had all her skills, but none of her restraints. "Listen to me," Katie said, gripping the clone's shoulder. "I know what you are feeling, the rage, the need to make them hurt. I feel it too. But we are not murderers. We are soldiers. There is a difference." The clone met her eyes. "They made me in a lab, used you like an animal, planned to make thousands more of us to die in their wars. How is killing them murder?" "Because that is what separates us from them," Katie replied. "We are going to destroy this facility, yes. We are going to escape, absolutely. But we are not going to kill anyone who is not actively trying to stop us. That is the line." The clone was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, your rules, for now." It was not a perfect agreement, but it was enough. They breached the reactor control room with tactical precision. Katie went in first, her stolen weapon set to stun. The clone followed, providing covering fire that was deliberately aimed to suppress rather than kill. The 4 guards went down in seconds, unconscious but alive. "Seal the door," Katie ordered, moving to the main control panel. The clone welded the entrance shut with its improvised laser, while Katie accessed the reactor systems. The Zenthari had made their control interfaces easy to use, probably too easy. Within seconds, Katie had bypassed the safety systems. "Commander Zephyrim to reactor control," a voice crackled over the speaker. "Surrender immediately, or we will flood that room with poison gas." Katie pressed the communication button. "Go ahead. But you should know we just disabled your emergency shutdown protocols. If we die in here, the reactor goes critical. You will lose the entire facility." There was a long pause. "You are bluffing. No species is that insane." "You are right," Katie said, beginning to input commands that made the reactor's temperature climb. "Most species are not. But humans are from a Class 12 death world, remember? We evolved learning how to gamble with extinction. Mutually assured destruction is kind of our specialty." Another pause, longer this time. Katie imagined Zephyrim consulting with Vexillar, both of them running calculations, trying to figure out if she was serious. She was absolutely serious. "What do you want?" Zephyrim finally asked. "Our ship," Katie said, "my fighter, intact and fully fueled in the primary hangar bay, plus safe passage out of this facility." "Impossible. The fighter was destroyed in the initial capture." Katie had expected that. "Then give us something else. Any ship capable of faster-than-light travel. You have 10 minutes to comply. After that, the reactor goes critical, and we all die together." 9 minutes, the clone corrected, watching the temperature gauge climb into the red zone. Katie could hear the barely hidden excitement in her duplicate's voice. The clone meant it. If they did not get a ship, it was perfectly willing to die taking the facility with them. Katie was not sure she could stop it if it came to that. 8 minutes, Commander," Katie said into the speaker. "I suggest you decide quickly." In the command center, Zephyrim was indeed consulting with Vexillar. The scientist was frantically running simulations on a holographic display. "The calculations are clear," Vexillar said, its voice shaking. "If the reactor goes critical, we lose everything. The research, the data, the entire facility, not to mention 4,000 personnel." "We cannot let them escape," Zephyrim argued. If word spreads that humans did this, that one specimen and its clone defeated an entire Zenthari research station, it will be a humiliation the Empire cannot tolerate. Better humiliation than death, Vexlar countered. Commander, I studied their planet's history. Humans have a saying about not cornering a predator unless you are prepared to lose the fight. We cornered them. They are prepared to die. Are you? Zephyrim looked at the countdown timer on the display. 6 minutes remained. Prepare a scout ship, the commander ordered finally. Minimal crew and program a tracking device into its systems. We will let them go, then follow them back to their homeworld. If they want to start a war, we will give them one they cannot win. 5 minutes, the clone announced in the reactor control room. Katie's hands never stopped working the controls, maintaining the delicate balance between meltdown and shutdown. Sweat ran down her face despite the cool air. One mistake, one wrong calculation, and they really would die here. We are going to make it, Katie said, though she was not sure if she was reassuring the clone or herself. Does it matter? The clone asked, and there was something sad in its voice. Even if we escape, what happens to me? I am not really human, am I? I am a copy, a thing they made in a lab. You are as human as I am, Katie said firmly. You have my memories, my DNA, my training, but you are also your own person, your own choices. That is what makes someone human, not where they came from. 4 minutes. The speaker crackled to life. Lieutenant Morrison, this is Commander Zephyrim. Your ship is ready in Hangar Bay 7. You have clearance for departure. Katie exchanged a glance with the clone. Could be a trap. Probably is a trap, the clone agreed. But we are out of options. Katie nodded and began reversing the reactor overload, carefully bringing the systems back to stable levels. We are shutting down the reactor destabilization, but if we detect any hostile action, we will detonate the explosives we planted throughout the station. It was a bluff. They had not had time to plant explosives, but Zephyrim did not need to know that. Understood. Proceed to the hangar bay. Security teams will keep their distance. Katie and the clone grabbed the unconscious guard's weapons and equipment, then unsealed the door. The hallways outside were empty, eerily so. Every step toward the hangar felt like walking through a graveyard. This is definitely a trap, the clone muttered. Yep, Katie agreed. But what choice do we have? They reached Hangar Bay 7 to find a small scout ship waiting, its engines already warming up. True to Zephyr's word, no security teams were visible, though Katie was certain they were watching from a distance. The two women boarded the ship. Katie took the pilot's seat while the clone secured the rear compartment. The controls were alien but simple, designed for quick operation. 3 weeks after the escape, Lieutenant Katie Morrison's scout ship limped into Earth's defense zone, broadcasting emergency identification codes on all frequencies. The vessel was damaged, showing signs of combat and emergency repairs, but it was intact and working. Captain Ryan Hughes was the first to greet them when they docked at the orbital station above Earth. He took one look at Katie, then at her identical companion, and his jaw dropped. Katie? And... Katie? He blinked rapidly. Okay, someone needs to explain what the hell happened out there. They explained everything in the meeting room, surrounded by military officers, intelligence agents, and scientists. Katie kept the details clinical and factual, but could not hide the anger in her voice when describing her captivity. The clone sat beside her, answering questions with the same precision, but with a noticeable edge, a barely controlled fury that made several officers nervous. So the Zenthari Empire intended to clone human soldiers, Admiral Patricia Lang said, reviewing the data Katie had downloaded from the facility. And they succeeded, at least partially. They succeeded completely, Katie corrected. The clone is viable, stable, and possesses all my training and abilities. What they did not account for was human psychology. You cannot program a human being like a computer. The clone spoke up, its voice hard. They thought they could make slaves. Instead, they made enemies. Admiral Lang studied the clone carefully. And what do we call you? You are clearly not Lieutenant Morrison, despite the genetic identity. The clone considered this. It had thought about the question during the long journey home, about identity and purpose and what it meant to be human. Call me Alex. Alex Morrison, if Katie does not mind sharing the last name. Katie reached over and squeezed her duplicate's hand. I do not mind at all. Welcome to the family. The meeting continued for hours. The military wanted tactical information. The scientists wanted biological data. The diplomats wanted to know about the Xanthari's political structure and intentions. Finally, Admiral Lang called for a break. This is bigger than we thought. An alien empire that sees us as resources to be harvested. We need to prepare for the possibility of contact, potentially hostile contact. It is not a possibility, Katie said. It is a certainty. Commander Zephyrim let us go too easily. I am betting they planted a tracker on the ship, followed us back to Earth. They know where we are now. Her words proved true just 2 days later. The Xanthari fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system. 3 warships that were much bigger than anything in Earth's defense forces. They did not fire, did not threaten. Instead, they sent a message on all frequencies. Commander Zephyrim's image appeared on every screen, every monitor. The alien's voice was cold and formal. People of Earth, I am Commander Zephyrim of the Xanthari Empire. Your species has shown hostile capabilities against our research facilities. We come now to discuss terms of your surrender and integration into the Empire as a client species. Katie watched the broadcast from the command center, her fists clenched. Beside her, Alex's expression was dangerous. 24 of your hours, Zephyrim continued. If you do not respond with unconditional acceptance of our terms, we will demonstrate our military superiority. This is your only warning. The transmission ended. The command center erupted in controlled chaos. Officers shouted orders, analysts ran worst-case scenarios, and Admiral Lang demanded a full status report on Earth's defensive capabilities. We cannot fight 3 capital ships, Captain Hughes said grimly. Our weapons are no match for that kind of firepower. We would lose in minutes. Then we do not fight ship to ship, Katie said. An idea was forming, dangerous and reckless, exactly the kind of plan a desperate human might devise. We take the fight to them. Everyone turned to look at her. Explain, Admiral Lang ordered. Katie pulled up a tactical display. The Xanthari underestimated humans once. They thought they knew our capabilities, our limits. They were wrong. I propose we do something they will not expect. We board their ships. That is insane, Hughes said. Even if we could get a boarding team through their defenses, we would be outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Not if we are smart about it, Alex interrupted. Katie is right. The Xanthari think in terms of technological superiority, ship-to-ship combat. They will not expect ground assault tactics in space, and I know their facility layouts, their security methods, their weaknesses. Because you are one of them, an intelligence officer said suspiciously. Because I was made by them, Alex corrected sharply. There is a difference. I am human, and I want to hurt them as much as anyone in this room. Maybe more. Admiral Lang was quiet for a long moment, studying both women. Finally, she nodded. All right, we will hear the plan, but it better be more than just reckless courage, because that is not going to be enough. Katie smiled, the same fierce expression she had worn in the alien lab. Oh, it is definitely reckless, but it is also smart, surgical, and exactly the kind of warfare humans have been perfecting for centuries. The Xanthari wanted to study us, to understand what makes us dangerous. Let us give them a demonstration they will never forget. Over the next 18 hours, a plan came together. It was risky, requiring precise timing and incredible luck, but it played to humanity's strengths: adaptability, cleverness, and the willingness to take risks that rational species would never consider. 20 specialized soldiers, including Katie and Alex, would pilot modified combat shuttles to the Zenthari flagship. The shuttles would be disguised as debris, their life signs hidden, drifting into the warship's hangar bay during routine operations. Once inside, the teams would split up with specific objectives: disable communications, sabotage weapons systems, and if possible, capture the command deck. "It is a suicide mission," one of the selected soldiers said during the briefing. "Maybe," Katie agreed, "but if we succeed, we save Earth. If we fail, we at least show the Zenthari that humans do not surrender. We fight. Always." The soldiers nodded, understanding. This was what they had trained for, what they had sworn oaths to protect. Not all of them would come back, but they would go anyway. Alex stood beside Katie, checking equipment with practiced efficiency. "You know they will try to kill me on sight," the clone said quietly. "To them I am a failed experiment. A monster." "Then we will make sure they regret creating you," Katie replied, "because you are not their experiment anymore. You are my sister, and you are a soldier of Earth. That makes you one of us." Alex smiled, genuine warmth breaking through the anger that had defined its short existence. "Thanks. That means more than you know." The shuttles launched under cover of darkness, small vessels against the vast backdrop of space. They drifted slowly toward the Zenthari flagship, looking like debris from an earlier fight. Inside the lead shuttle, Katie checked her weapons one last time. Around her, the assault team was silent, each lost in their own thoughts. Beside her, Alex was perfectly calm, almost peaceful, and Katie realized that her clone had made peace with whatever came next. "Approaching the hangar bay," the pilot whispered. 60 seconds to insertion." Katie activated the communication system. "All teams, remember your objectives. We are not here to win a battle. We are here to send a message. Humans do not break. We do not surrender. We survive. And we fight back." "Hurrah!" came the whispered response from 20 throats. The shuttles slipped into the hangar bay, undetected among the regular traffic. The moment they touched down, the sides blew open and 20 human soldiers poured out, moving with lethal efficiency. The Zenthari security teams did not stand a chance. Humans had trained for close-quarters combat for thousands of years, had refined urban warfare and boarding actions to a deadly art. Within minutes, the hangar bay was secured, and the teams were moving into the ship proper. Katie and Alex led their squad toward the command deck, cutting through opposition with brutal effectiveness. Every hallway was a killing ground, every junction a tactical problem to be solved with violence and precision. They found Commander Zephyrim in the central corridor, the alien commander surrounded by elite guards. Zephyrim's eyes widened at seeing the two humans. "Impossible," the commander breathed. "You cannot be here. Our defenses—" "Your defenses were designed to stop ships, not soldiers," Katie interrupted, raising her weapon. "You studied our technology, our ships, our weapons, but you never studied our history. Humans have been boarding enemy vessels since we had wooden boats and bronze swords. This is what we do." Alex stepped forward, and there was murder in its eyes. "You made me to be a slave, a tool, but you forgot something important about humans. We do not stay down, we do not give up, and we never, ever forgive." The fight was brief and brutal. When the smoke cleared, Zephyrim was on the ground, dying. The alien commander looked up at Katie and Alex, understanding finally dawning in its fading eyes. "We underestimated you," Zephyrim whispered. "Not your technology or your strength, your will, your refusal to accept defeat." "Yeah," Katie said coldly. "You did." She triggered the explosives they had planted throughout the ship. All teams, evacuate now. We have 3 minutes. The soldiers ran, racing back to their shuttles as explosions rocked the warship from inside. They launched just as the flagship began to break apart, its reactor going critical, its systems catastrophically failing. The other 2 Zenthari warships, seeing their command vessel destroyed from within, retreated at faster-than-light speed, fleeing back to whatever distant corner of the galaxy they had come from. Earth had won, for now. Back on the orbital station, Katie and Alex stood before Admiral Lang. Of the 20 soldiers who had boarded the flagship, 17 had made it back. 3 had died buying time for the others to escape. "You did it," Admiral Lang said simply. "You saved Earth and sent the Zenthari a message they will not forget." "We sent a message to everyone," Katie corrected. "Any species out there that thinks humans are weak, that we can be captured and used and broken. They need to know what happens when you try." Alex nodded. "We are not the biggest or the strongest, but we are survivors. We adapt, we overcome, and we never stop fighting." Admiral Lang smiled. "I think you just wrote humanity's introduction to the galaxy." Later, Katie and Alex stood together at a window, looking out at the stars. So much had happened in such a short time. "What happens now?" Alex asked. "Do I get to stay, build a life here?" "You get to do whatever you want," Katie replied. "That is what freedom means." "Then I want to stay," Alex said. "I want to be a soldier, protect Earth, make sure what happened to us never happens to anyone else." Katie put an arm around her clone's shoulders. "Then that is what we will do. Together." As the 2 women stood together, watching Earth turn peacefully below, a new chapter began. The Zenthari had learned a painful lesson about human resilience, but they were just the first. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless species and empires. Some would become allies, others would become enemies, but all of them would eventually learn the same truth. Humanity had arrived among the stars, and nothing would ever be the same again. "Hangar bay doors opening," an automated voice announced. Katie powered up the engines and lifted off, guiding the ship through the opening bay doors and out into the void of space. Behind them, the research facility grew smaller, a dark structure against the stars. "We made it," the clone said, disbelief in its voice. "Not yet," Katie replied, her hands flying over the navigation controls. "We need to get back to human space, warn Earth about the Zenthari, and figure out what to do about you." "About me?" "Yeah, because you are coming with me. We are not leaving you behind, and we are not letting you become whatever the Zenthari wanted you to be. You are going to be something better." The clone was quiet for a long moment, then smiled. "Okay, I can work with that." As the scout ship jumped to faster-than-light speeds, leaving the Zenthari facility far behind, Katie allowed herself a moment of relief. They had survived, escaped, and struck a blow against the aliens who had dared to violate human dignity. But this was not over. Not by a long shot. "The reactor core," the clone suggested. "If we can destabilize it, we can threaten to blow up the entire facility. Force them to give us a ship." Katie looked at her duplicate with new respect. "That is either brilliant or insane." "Can it not be both?" the clone asked with a grin. They made their way toward the heart of the facility, leaving a trail of unconscious guards and disabled security systems behind them. The Zenthari were learning a hard lesson about what happened when you tried to cage a predator. Humans did not break. They did not surrender. They fought back, no matter the odds. And right now, 2 humans were about to show the Zenthari Empire exactly what that meant: fear of a human. The clone moved through the maintenance tunnels like a ghost. It had disabled security cameras and avoided patrol teams. The tunnel was dark, tight, and smelled of recycled air and machine oil. To the clone, it felt natural. Humans had evolved in caves and forests, learning to move quietly while predators hunted. The clone's mind was a strange thing, a collision of Katie Morrison's memories and something new, something raw and unfiltered. It remembered being a child in Colorado, learning to ski. It remembered pilot training. It remembered being captured. But it also remembered waking up in a tank, understanding instantly what had been done. The Zenthari had tried to program loyalty, but they failed to understand that loyalty was earned, not coded. You could not copy a human soul and expect it to serve monsters. The facility's alarms continued to wail as the clone vanished deeper into the shadows, hunting for the original, ready to burn down everything in its path. The Zenthari were about to learn a very hard lesson about what happens when you try to cage a predator. Katie opened her eyes and smiled in the darkness of her cell. Somewhere in this station, her clone was being grown, and when it woke up, when it realized what had been done, what it was meant to be, all hell was going to break loose. She just had to be ready when it happened. The wait began.